Joining me now, Republican Congressman from Illinois, Adam Kinzinger. He serves on the Foreign Affairs Committee and the Energy and Commerce Committee. Sir, thanks for being with us this morning.
You bet. You bet.
Look, I just want to ask you first, how do you view Milley's calls to General Lee of China?
Look, I really want to hear from General Milley on this. What we have now is leaked excerpts, but I can talk in theory here. If there was a real concern about, some kind of flashpoint between China and the United States, then a back channel communication is not a bad thing. However, I got to be honest with you. The idea that China was scared that Donald Trump was going to launch a nuclear weapon, or that, there was all this fear, General Milley could easily have set up, as supposedly he did, hey, we're not going to launch nukes in an immoral kind of war. But I got to tell you, truthfully, what the Chinese, and I think the Russians, frankly, thought of Donald Trump was not that he was a loose cannon that was going to launch nukes everywhere, but that the guy was actually scared to take action anywhere. And that's what you saw in China's expansion, Russia's expansion, et cetera. But I do think it is important now, since General Milley is still in the position he is, for us to get a full accounting of what happened, because I think it's inappropriate for the general to have unilaterally called China unless there was a real fear, in which case we deserve to know what that was as well.
In the case, there isn't really a lot of chatter, at least so far that we know of, about Russia in this book. But when it comes to China, it was President Xi that was sitting at Mar-a-Lago with President Trump when he was launching a missile strike against Syria, which certainly would have left an impact on a world leader to see the president of the United States do that over a piece of chocolate cake. It sounds like maybe there was some concern for them to be jittery, no?
Well, let's keep in mind that was one of the weaker strikes against Syria. It didn't really have an effect at all, except more kind of psychological for us, not even against Syria. Look, I mean, this is why I think we need more answers to this. Mm-hmm. Like I said, if this was an appropriate thing for the general to do, and maybe it was, that means there was some real deep concern. But otherwise, you don't reach out and call our enemies like this. And so, look, the bottom line is January 6th was an awful day. January 6th put us in a very weak position, which is why I called for the 25th Amendment to be executed immediately, because I thought for a couple of weeks we basically felt like we didn't have a commander-in-chief. But we have to be really, really concerned with maintaining the civilian control over the military. And that's why we need more answers, I think.
Well, let's talk about that, because Milley thought that Trump post-election, and certainly post-January 6th, was in a state of mental decline. What is your reaction to learning that?
I don't disagree. I mean, and again, this is why I said I think the 25th Amendment needs put into effect here, not as some kind of payback for January 6th, but because during that 2-week period between inauguration and from January 6th, it really felt like we didn't have a leader at the head. And if all you have to do is look at, Donald Trump praising General Lee today and saying he would have won Afghanistan. Donald Trump excited, in essence, that we failed in Afghanistan because he can now point and say he didn't do that, even though we all know he really led to the setup of what happened in Afghanistan. Look, I got to just say, the American people deserve way better than what they've had. Joe Biden's a decent man. I fully think he failed and botched the Afghanistan withdrawal. Donald Trump set that up. And we're stuck in this matrix of belief that we only have, if we don't like Joe Biden, we got to go with Donald Trump. No, the American people deserve so much better. We're an amazing country.
Some pretty eye-popping poll numbers that we've learned of. 78% of Republicans, so these are, potential Republican voters, they believe that Biden didn't have enough votes to win the election. How do you reverse that kind of mentality? Has the big lie won in the Republican Party?
I hope not. I guess if I had the answer on how to reverse it, I probably would have implemented it. I think here's part of the problem. After January 6th, after this whole big lie stuff, people were looking for leadership out of D.C. And when all of the people, if you're a base Republican voter and all the people you trust are quiet and go along with the big lie or, at least acquiesce to it, you have no reason to believe otherwise. And so when it basically ends up with me, Liz Cheney, and a few others out there saying the election wasn't stolen, I mean, I guess we can be happy that a quarter or a third of Republicans don't, but I don't know the answer besides come out and keep saying, ladies and gentlemen, you know, Donald Trump lost not because the election was stolen, but because he ran an election focused on firing up only the most extreme elements of the Republican Party, and he turned off the swing voters that typically used to vote Republican, including those in the suburbs near where I live that have been Republicans their entire life that would never consider themselves Republicans today, not because they've changed, but because you've changed.
The Capitol complex looks different this morning. We're seeing fences that have gone up ahead of this rally this weekend, the Justice for January 6th, Justice for J6 rally, as it's being called by its right-wing organizers. And most GOP lawmakers, I think sitting lawmakers, are ignoring invitations to come. They're not condemning the rally, though, and there are actually 2 Republican congressional candidates who are going to be in attendance. What do you think it would be like to be sitting in the House chamber next to a member of Congress who supported at a rally people who had broken into or tried to break into the House chamber?
You know, I don't know. Let's keep in mind, Oath Keepers may try to sound like there's some constitutional America flag waving thing. No, they are all about the overthrow of the federal government. You know, when we talk about things like vaccines, door-to-door vaccines, and you have this ominous, they're going to come jam a vaccine in your arm and murder your family of the federal government. No, all the federal government's talking about is like, hey, if we can make it convenient for you to be healthy, let's do that. And now all of a sudden these groups are like, overthrow the government. I mean, this overthrows the government fetish that exists. I don't understand it, except there's a lot of bored people out there that probably never served a day in their life in the military and get to go play dress up. So if one of those folks gets elected to Congress and sits next to me, I don't think you cannot be against the Constitution and also somehow swear to the Constitution that you're going to protect it. It's bullcrap. And frankly, if we have to have, you know, this fence put up every time somebody that hates the federal government goes and rallies, it is time for the Republican Party to denounce militiaism and to just say, we are a country that takes our disagreements and we discuss them in Congress. We don't do this violently and with all this angst that everybody has nowadays. Let's do this as grown-ups and do it in the government that we inherited from some people that made some pretty bold moves a few hundred years ago.
Congressman, thank you for coming on this morning. We do appreciate it. Adam Kinzinger.
You bet.